welcome back to They Did What? Your source for the internet's craziest, most entertaining stories, where I go over them, analyze them, and most certainly make fun of them. Today, going to go over a story that was sent from a subscriber over to my SSM channel, and he writes in about his story how when he was younger, he made the fatal mistake of getting involved with and marrying a single MOM. A single MOM who, when he was at the time, he was 23, and she was 24. Married and divorced by age 24. As if that's not a giant red flag in itself. And eventually, at first things were good, but eventually things went to hell in a handbasket. Where she started bringing up the idea of having threesome-things. She was hanging out with a lot of gals that were obviously trouble. And she eventually cheated on him. Which you're going to see that, unfortunately, the dude she cheated on had some serious mental issues, okay? It was his neighbor, and he liked him, but it actually felt bad for him because he's got some mental issues. She took advantage of him, and the guy offs himself. And, of course, she doesn't care. So I thought it'd be a good one to cover here, guys, just to show you, again, how some of these, what these gals will do, why you have to pay close attention to who they hang out with, how, again, if there are signs out there that are quite obvious, like married and divorced by 24 years old, 23 years old, and a single MOM and all those other things, and they hang out with people that want to live in a certain lifestyle. These aren't good. These aren't relationship type of people you want to be involved with, and the things that can happen, and sadly how some people really get hurt in situations like this. And of course, this guy handles this. He kicks her to the curb, but a lot of important lessons here. So it starts off, he says here, when I was 23, I married a 24-year-old divorced single MOM. Smack. What the hell would you do that for? When you were too young, too single MOM, married and divorced, you think it's going to work out better with you? We were married for 12 years, okay, till you were about 35 years old. We weren't prepared for it, but we were very happy in the beginning. She was more into me than I was into her for the first half of the marriage. In the beginning, she had no problem letting her toxic friends go, but towards the end, she picked up some new ones. Probably because she was bored, you know? But again, there's a reason she was married and divorced at the ripe old age of 24. There was a woman that she worked with who told her about some threesome-things that she had with her husband. What did I tell you about her friends and coworkers? They ended up divorcing each other, and that friend started just drinking herself to sleep every night. My ex changed jobs and lost touch. But shortly after that, she started talking about wanting to have threesome-things. And I'd be like, okay, well, I'm going to start talking about having divorces because that's not in the cards. She said with another girl, and she would find her. After a couple of months, we just stopped talking about it. But one week and about a year later, when I was out visiting a family, our neighbor was over drinking with her and hanging out with her and her two teenage sons. No guy should be hanging out with your wife, whether it's a coworker, friend, or a neighbor, or anything like that. I don't care if the kids were there. This wasn't really unusual because he did that a lot when I was home too. He went home around midnight, and then a short time afterwards, he left. She went over, knocked on his door, and said, "If you want me, take me." He said, "Okay," and that was that. That was the only time. Sure about that? And she told me about it 1 week later. This caused an absolute earthquake, as it usually does. Yeah, it's called, whoosh, we're out of here, we're done. This goes to show you the people she started hanging out with again. Putting those ideas in her head about threesome-things and all that. And by her bringing that up, you can't think that she's not going to cheat eventually. She accepted full accountability for her actions and really did all she could for a while after that. Yeah, because you're her meal ticket. But after pushing through as hard as I could and walking up with a fake smile on my face for as long as I could, all it took was one bitchy remark about something unrelated for me to just quickly snap and decide once and for all that I was getting out of this. This is why somebody cheats, move on. End of story. It's not going to get better. A guy's always going to be wondering what she's doing, who she's hanging out with, who she's talking to. They try to get romantic and they visualize some other's you-know-what in her mouth or other parts of her. It's just not a good idea. Shortly after that, I left without warning and eventually moved back to my home state. I started over and filed for divorce. She completely fell apart and tried to get me back for a little while, but ended up acting out in ways I never thought she could. Again, back to the married and divorced at 24 years old single MOM. Now, I get we all make mistakes when we're young, fair enough, but even then, shouldn't be your problem. Now listen to this. Here's the plot twist. He says, from this point on, I will focus on the neighbor because after 20 years, his story stands out as the most unusual and tragic part of this whole saga. Let's call him Jake. Jake's the neighbor she was hooking up with. And you can tell this guy's compassionate because you would think if this neighbor was nailing my wife, no feeling sorry for him. But listen to this. Jake was in his early to mid-30s and lived next door with his dad. His dad was a retired professional musician, and Jake himself was a phenomenal musician. That stuff runs in families. It's amazing. He was a former member of a really good rock band and had a couple of top 40 radio hits in the late 90s. Oh, shit, I want to know who this is. Jake was also a very nice guy. Most guys would never say that about the dude that banged his wife, but remember, she initiated. Yeah, well, she initiated, sure, but also he went along with this. Now listen to this. He says Jake had schizophrenia, so his grip on reality was very tenuous most of the time. Okay, he has his issues and he's off his meds, but still, you're nicer than me. Most people would say he was happy and harmless, but a bit out of touch and childlike, but not at all deceitful or selfish. He didn't actually know he had done anything wrong until I told him. Okay, dude. I was friends with his dad, too. He was livid about the whole thing and came down on him long and hard for it. Jake was forced to witness the beginning of a real aftermath of what they had done after I left, and he couldn't handle it. He fell into a deep, guilt-ridden depression and was admitted into a psych hospital where he soon offed himself. Even though at first I was mad at both of them, I still saw him mostly as an unwittingly participant in her betrayal. I had no idea what he would do at the time, but I never told him that I didn't really blame him so much. I don't know what I could have said or done to make a difference, but of all the terrible things in this totally avoidable chain of miserable events, the permanent deletion of a son is the worst of all. Yeah, I mean, this is something about this guy that this guy was nailing his wife, but he feels bad because the guy obviously has mental issues, and he claims not a real good grip on reality, childlike, all that. And he does blame her, and it is her fault. And she obviously knew that and took advantage of it, his ex-wife. He also feels bad for his father because he knew him. But he says here, I absolutely hate infidelity. It never ends well. The people it hurts are never the ones who bear the blame. So there you go, guys. It's a very quick story, but I want to show you again the stereotype about a lot, not all, but a lot of the single MOMs. Be careful with that. When gals hang out, who their friends and coworkers are, they can influence them very much. Be careful about that. If your gal's opening up the relationship, whether it's being threesomes or being open marriages or all those things, it's not a good idea. It's not what you signed up for. End it. Walk away, because otherwise, sooner or later, if they're not getting what they request or try to manipulate to do, they're going to do it outside, right here. And this goes to show you how people get hurt in this situation. It's just a freaking mess. If you're to the point that you're that unhappy, just break up. Just divorce, move on, end of story. The problem is you got a lot of selfish people in this world. They want to have their cake and eat it too. And while I'm not as compassionate as that guy was about the situation, the guy did have mental issues, and this guy obviously wrote this in as a good man. He's a father. I think he's a father, so he doesn't want to imagine one of his kids, taking their own lives because of somebody else. So, but anyhow, just be careful, gentlemen. All right, guys, that's it for today. Be sure to comment down below. Let us think about this. And guys, you come across a really good story like to share, by all means, email to me, strongsuccessfulmale@gmail.com. Just give me some time to get to, and I definitely will when I get the chance. Personal stories, Reddit stories, news stories. Most of the stuff on here is Reddit stories. So some of the good ones here. And the juicier, the better, of course. And also, guys, if you haven't done so already, definitely check out my other channel, SSM Clips. It's shorter versions of quick little things that are very entertaining. Definitely trying to grow that. And subscribe to my other channel, Strong Successful Male, if you haven't done so already. Really trying to grow these channels this year, and the more the channels grow, the more YouTube thinks this is good, and they'll spread the word. And that's more guys getting help, and more feminists getting pissed off at people like me. That's always a plus. And be sure to like the video, share with your friends, and subscribe. I'll catch you next time.